Welcome back to Bullet Catcher Gaming. This is, of course, Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Now, with the news that Breakpoint is now dead, as such, no more updates, and the furthering news that it looks like Project Over is going to be the next Ghost Recon game that we should see possibly in 2023. Check out our videos on any of those subjects if you want to know more. We thought we would take a look at what the next Ghost Recon game needs to be. Now, when I say what it needs to be, what I mean is we're going to go over the core kind of values as such that the game needs to be able to hold. So this is not super in-depth. This is about these things need to be in there, or some of the community might deem it to be, you know, that Ubisoft have not listened to things that we've been saying. So we're going to have a look at that. But firstly, before I go into that, we do have a survey up for the next game with about 100 really important questions in them. And we're going to be sending those results on to Ubisoft. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out, that would be so awesome. The link is in the description below for the survey. Thank you in advance for doing that. And I just want to say something, you know, a massive thank you to everybody who has supported us, all the recent subscribers that we've had. This channel's nothing without you, and we're going to continue to push and try and help shape the next game with your help. We are a community-focused channel. We always will be a community-focused channel. We exist because of things that you tell us and the feedback that you give us. I'm not here to be some kind of, YouTube personality or anything like that. We're here because we want the best from Ghost Recon. And the way that we get that is with myself and all of you coming together and putting forward our opinions, and those opinions being given to Ubisoft to create the next game. That's what we want to do. That's what we're here for. And we will continue to do that going forward. So let's have a look. The next game then. What would be they're not in any particular order, but I'm going to go through some points that these things need to be in there. If you think I've missed something, then let me know. But obviously, like I said, this is not massively in depth. These are just the key points that the game needs to be or needs to have in there. Things that the community have said over and over again. So first of all, we could look at location of the next one. Personally, and I do believe from feedback from what you guys have said, it should be some kind of real world location. Now, they could change the name. It doesn't have to. So if they chose, let's say, Afghanistan, they could call it something else, but they use that as their kind of main focus. They've used places there. Will it be that? I don't know. That was just me, just using an example. But I think that could be the best way to go. Now, saying that, moving on from that, third person with an option for a first-person shooter element added into it. Now, the reason why I think this is important is because obviously Frontline, a lot of people were saying they weren't interested in it because it was an FPS. Had it been third person and not Battle Royale and just a big Ghost Recon PvE, they would have been. Now, in that case, third person in an open world is probably the best place to have this next title, go within those parameters. And with the option, like I said, for first person, for the people, I also think it would help bring more people into the game if you had both options. Multiple biomes within this map. So snow, desert, which we were lacking in Breakpoint, some jungle, mountain areas, woodlands, some marshes, and quite importantly, towns and cities as well. I think just a bit of everything in there to make each place feel different, so your costuming can feel different as well, that kind of stuff. So we need variable mission types across the map. I think personally, bosses on regions, a bit like what Motherland did and a bit like what Wildlands did. A plethora of side missions, which will have an effect possibly on the main story, or set up a side story which later on would filter into the main story. I think we need interactive weather. So there are storms. I think the storms in Wildlands were better than Breakpoint. They had a kind of tension to the game, and it really, if you like stealthing, I think it makes it so much more fun with that weather. Maybe add some snow whiteouts, heavy mists, some sandstorms in the desert areas, things like that. We're not talking about crazy hurricanes throwing things everywhere. I just mean, some deep kind of weather system I think would be really interesting. Really importantly here, a living, breathing world with NPCs kind of working. They could be exercising, see them running down the side of roads, driving, of course, just going about their daily business. And of course, add a day and night cycle, not just for NPCs, but for enemies as well. Enemy bases that sleep. They're on half guard, for example. Some are sleeping, some are awake. I think this adds for a much more realistic experience. And I think going from feedback, that's what people really want to see. More buildings in the world. So, like, for example, the towns and cities in Wildlands, as fun as they were, a lot of them you couldn't go into. So how about some of these more buildings where everything's kind of open. If there's a building there, you can enter it with things like shops and things like that are in the towns to make them feel more like actual towns rather than just kind of buildings. We still want to see, like, whether, depending on where this is, your kind of shanty towns, your farm areas, things like that. But I think it's important to kind of really make it look like this is alive, and the NPCs in these areas. Let's have them react to your actions. So if you need intelligence from an NPC and you've just killed 2 NPCs within that area of operations, they won't give it to you. You are now hostile towards them. That they don't trust you, and you could have to build up that trust by completing, whether it be side missions, whatever it is, that helps build that trust back up for them to give you intelligence. You've got to work for your intelligence, not just randomly pick it up in a building somewhere. You could even get so hostile to the fact that some maybe armed NPCs, local militia, whatever it is, will turn on you. I think this is a really interesting dynamic that could add a whole new level of, realism to the game. I think we should have a bit more dynamic wildlife in the game. It's not massively important, I must admit, but if you're laying prone, ready to hit your target, and a snake kind of goes past, and that snake can hurt you, it could make you have to move. I just think it could be an interesting thing to add. So I think the game should probably be set just before or just after Wildlands. I think we should keep it in and around that kind of area. I know there's plenty of people that would like a Future Soldier title. I wouldn't be against that at all. But I do think that kind of, if you're going to have Nomad's team, now that's another thing that I think we can discuss further in another video. Do you have the original Wildlands team? Do you have a completely new team? I think a lot of people do want a new team and maybe move on from Nomad. But, if it's going to be, say, just before Wildlands, then Nomad's team would make more sense. If it's going to be after Breakpoint, perhaps not. So that one's an interesting one. But, and also, regards to the team, make sure that the technology is not too over the top within the whole world in itself. I don't think any of us want to see robotic tanks and things like that anymore. I think we're done with that with Breakpoint. Advanced technology, absolutely, because that's what it is about. You're supposed to have the technology to give you that edge. But let's not go too crazy and have, gargoyle drones and things like that. Let's keep it a bit more basic. Maybe have a few tanks driving around as opposed to robot tanks and things like that. So I think that's an interesting point to where to go. No gear score. This game must not have gear score. I think it's vitally important. I think it really did hurt the game. I think a lot of the criticism for Breakpoint came from gear score, and I'm sure there are people out there that enjoy using gear score, but obviously you didn't have it on Wildlands, and a lot of those people, I'm sure, still enjoyed Wildlands. I think you must keep it out. Raids, I think there shouldn't be any raids at all based on what was in Breakpoint. I know that they didn't go down well and the rest of the raids were cancelled, but there's no reason why you couldn't do a new version of the raid. Now, that might get a few people going, well, no, we don't want raids. But what I mean is that you can set up a raid in terms of the words, the raid. You could have some kind of separate thing where, I don't know, you could literally, they're missions that are kind of based with real world kind of things to do. So it could be, you've got to get into this base, it's a separate thing. You get into this base, you have to sabotage this and you have to get out without being seen. Or you have to go here and assassinate this person and do the, like, make them real. But you could still call them a raid if you wanted to, or call them something different. But if you want to do something like a raid to add extra rewards or whatever it is they feel that they want to do, make it a raid that people will actually want to play. You know, and if you make it kind of real world kind of things, then I think people will want to play it. But personally, I'd rather leave them out. But if they are going to put them in, do something like that. Another really important thing, and anyone who plays Far Cry, stuff like that, you'll know what I mean by this, a mission creator and editor. If you think about it, a mission creator would be such a benefit. Now, the Wildlands and Breakpoint has a lot of different types of players that play these games. Milsim players, from more hardcore players, and a lot of casual players. And the casual players tend to say, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have a zombie mode? Wouldn't it be cool to have this? Whereas obviously a lot of the hardcore and milsim kind of crowd don't really want that. They just want stick to military. Now, the good thing is if you add a mission creator or editor, you know, to be able to go and create your own map using assets in the game, you can have all of those things without ever actually affecting the main game. So you can go into a separate thing. Milsim creators could go and make their own maps, get their friends to challenge them on maps. It would be so much fun. It would keep the game alive for a long, long time as well. You know, they could have ranked kind of maps, or where you go and score them out of 5, whatever, a bit like Far Cry. But you could also then, if you want zombies, you could just have them the option to make soldiers into zombies instead, but only ever have that in a map editor. It then has no effect whatsoever on the main game, and we know that we've never got to worry about having zombies or anything like that on the main game. I also think world modifiers are important. Obviously, the world modifiers at the moment with the gas and terminators and things like that and drones, they would be different because we're hoping that there wouldn't be terminators and drones and things in there. So you could use, you could have like nighttime constant. So it's night all the time when you put your modifier on, never go to day. You could also have the opposite to that it's always day and you don't have to worry about that night cycle, whatever it is. It might be that that's how you're planning your missions. You want them all to be night. You're going to be playing for the next 5 hours with your buddies and you just want night. So you should be able to just turn night on. You could have weather ones, so it's like the whole map is misty no matter where you go. You could have all different types of things. I think world modifiers can really kind of make a big improvement. We need better cutscenes. The cutscenes in Wildlands, for me, vastly superior over to the ones in Breakpoint. I think we should go back to a Wildlands style cutscenes. I think really important. A mission planner. So, you know, before you're about to hit a base or something like that, you should be able to have something that when you go into your tac map, you could set up where people need to be. You know, set up things. So you basically plan your whole mission on a base before you do it. I think that would be something that people would be really interested in. I think they need to use real Spec Ops guys advising on the game. And I also think any motion capture done should be done with real Spec Ops guys doing the motion capture as well. I think that's massively important. I know that they had a Green Beret, I believe, on Breakpoint. I don't know what he did to help them, but I think they need a lot more help in that area. Things like more thermal optics, more, breaching tools, things like that can, yes, new things were brought into Breakpoint, but they weren't always utilized at the best way. I think you should be able to use those breaching things on pretty much anything you want, or almost any fence in the game, not just certain areas and certain places. I think we need things like smoke grenades and things like that the community have been talking about for a long, long time. Really important to me. So movement physics from Breakpoint, I think they were improved from Wildlands, but at the same time, there are things from Wildlands that should be brought into. I mean, like when you lay prone, the fact that you can move sideways, backwards, and things like that was vastly superior than it was, stuff like that. And I also think more realistic animations, especially for takedowns and things like that. Some of them are a bit silly in Breakpoint. They need to be improved and worked on, and definitely need improving going forward. This is a hugely important one. Advanced enemy AI with different troop styles as well, using real-world tactics. So, maybe have an enemy special forces team as well. I know that we had wolves in Breakpoint. They don't feel anything special apart from slightly bullet spongy and a bit armory. I mean that they move different, that they attack you faster. They can be whatever it is you want. Something different about them, like a QRF, something like that. We need enemies that can lay down and actually go prone. We need enemies that will set up ambushes. We want this kind of stuff, like have snipers out in the wild and not just at the bases that you could just be driving along and randomly get shot at. They should be able to stack up in APCs and chase you down, and so a whole group of troops get out at the same time. Enemy AI has got to be vastly improved. It's just not good enough. We need them to really, really work on this and get this done. And possibly add, say, a Unidad style system to the troops as well, to enemy troops. And you could even have different styles of troops having a different system. So some will just, like your basic troops, they could just keep coming and coming and coming. And you could have, like, if it's more specialized troops, they could be, they will hunt you further. Things like that, like a different system to make different troops come after you differently. Enemy soldier injuries, I think, which would be really interesting. And also with your AI teammates, because I know people do like them, have them that they can get injured too. Properly injured, that you need to bandage them up, stuff like that. And with AI teammates, of course, I think they absolutely must have individual commands. They need to be able to breach and clear, things like that. I think at the moment, the AI teammates are too generic. They walk around in front in the open. That's got to stop. If you're going stealthy, they need to go stealthy. And you need to be able to go, I want you there, you there, you there. Move them around. And also in terms of AI teammates, I think what's important is team sizes. I think the next game needs to have a maximum of 8 players. That doesn't mean to say you have to use 8 players. If you and friends are playing, you could just use 4. You could use 3. But you could also, if you want, fill the rest of your team with AI if you want to. Just give us those options of up to 8. If you want 8, if it's you and 7 of your friends, have 8 if you do it. If you only want 2, you only have 2. If you want the rest of your team with AI, use that. If you don't, then just have the 2 of you. Give us the options to do that. And also, obviously, depending if there's PvP, at least have 8-player teams on either side, so maybe at least 16 on a map. But I'm not sure we'll get PvP and that will stay separate in Frontline, but we're not sure about that at the moment. So I think that's an interesting one. A new class system, I think, could be interesting. Now, class systems tend to be put in before PvP, so because we don't know whether it will have PvP or not. But if there is a new class system, personally, I think the best way to do this is to kind of create your own class. So you can set up a class system and you can have, say, 5 slots, and there's, say, 20 skills, whatever it may be, and you can then choose different skills and fill out your own class, like create your own class. I think this is a better idea. personally, and you can still only have like whether it is one special ability, like, you know, Pathfinder's got white hot, so if you have that, you can't then have what you would have from like in Breakpoint, the Panther class, the spray. You can't have 5 of those or whatever, maybe just the one special and then different extra bits, whatever it is. I think also less spawn locations around the map, like bivouacs and stuff. It could be that you could set the bivouacs where you want them to be. But personally, I think safe houses, a bit like Wildlands, work better. Made you use the vehicles more. For me, vehicles felt a bit redundant in Breakpoint, which was kind of sad. So I'd like to go back to that. Okay, repelling. Everyone wants repelling. Just repelling in general, repelling out of helicopters, repelling down mountains. It's something that has been asked for over and over and over again. It absolutely has to be in there. I think we need improved carry mechanics. If you're carrying a heavy weapon, you need to move slower. If you're carrying heavier gear, you need to move slower. And also, regardless with what you're wearing, you need to be able to get a detection buff based on what you're wearing and what your location you're in. If you're wearing some kind of snow camo and you're in the snow, your detection buff should be better than if you are wearing a jungle camo walking around in the snow. I think that's really important that we do that. We need a massively improved gunsmith. Whether you look at a game like Tarkov or something like that, a lot of people like the way it works in Call of Duty with 10 slots and you do what you want with it. Any of those systems could work. It needs to be more in depth. I think really, very importantly, if you've got a rail, you should be able to put anything on it. Stop restricting what things you can have on a weapon. That should not happen. If the rail's there, you should be able to use it. We need things like improved bullet drop, kill distance, rendering distance, weapon sounds. This all needs huge work. The gunsmith, the game is primarily about using these guns to shoot people. It needs to be a way up there in terms of importance of how this game works. The guns have got to be hugely important. I think if you've got something like an M4 platform, you should be able to, instead of going to pick up an M4 variant, you should be able to just change that platform to make that variant instead. I think that's very important. I think things like helicopter mechanics, put the old way of flying in from Wildlands and have the new way. Don't take options away, give more options. It's really important. More options means that you're just going to get a better game. Crossovers. If you're going to have crossovers in the story, personally, most of the crossovers don't work. I don't mind if it's like a Predator style one from Wildlands that was a very separate thing, had nothing to do with the story, and it was just totally separate. I don't think the Terminator one worked very well for me in Breakpoint. I'd rather not have them. If you do have them, make them something that makes sense. We've seen so many other Ubisoft products come in on crossovers. Ghost Recon should be just as important as any of these other franchises. You know, I think why are we pushing them down and pushing other franchises above them by, Ghost Recon's going to need Rainbow Six help? Why does it? No, it shouldn't. Make a good enough game with a good enough story. You don't need to do that. Concentrate on great DLC. Give us DLC every few months. Give us new guns and camos and stuff every few weeks. Update the store, things like that. You don't need to worry about Rainbow Six crossovers and stuff like that. You want to put the camos in from characters in the store, then that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But I don't need them in my story every single time. I don't need Sam Fisher in there every single time. I really don't. Ghost Recon should stand on its own 2 feet. I'd quite like the idea of, like a patch creator. A lot of people have said that, maybe a patch creator. All of your gear you should be able to put whatever camo you want on it, no matter what. Even if it's a skin that you've bought, let's say it's a Rainbow Six skin, you should be able to change that into whatever camo you like. Once you've bought it, you should be able to do what you want with it. I think hugely important. And obviously, probably the most important thing is that this game needs to be a deep story. It needs to be well written. It needs to flow. It needs to make sense. It shouldn't have story segments. that don't go anywhere. Unless they're teasing something for a later DLC, that's okay. But if it just stops and doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't make sense. Don't go back and start changing this, that, and the other. Do not have the fact that you can go and kill your main villain who you've pushed in the first 5 minutes of starting the game. It's insane. Don't do stuff like that. Just make a good in-depth story that is interesting, intriguing, that will keep us wanting to come back for more. DLCs that link into that story, or at least cross off, branch off from that story, or drop little clues for future DLCs, things like that. You could even have like a deck of cards, for example, with your enemies on them. Seems to be a popular thing in warfare, so why not have all our bad guys on a deck of cards or something? And you could release more deck of cards guys as they turn up in the region or something like that. It's just really, really important to get this part right. The Breakpoint story was, let's be honest, a mess. So we don't want a mess of a game. And the most important thing, before I finish off, that absolutely must never, ever, ever, ever be in a Ghost Recon game: no goddamn NFTs. Ever. Ever. Get rid of them. We don't fucking want them. And with that being said, thank you so much for listening to me. What did you think of this? Do you think I've got it wrong? Do you think it could be improved? Like I said, didn't go into massive, massive detail. Let us know what you think. I personally think if these kind of things were put in there, we could have a great game on our hands. Let me know what you think. Take care. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.